The modern world is a mosaic of nations, each with its flag, its borders, and its story. But behind every line on the map lies a long and complex journey, the birth of nations. This story is not just about geography or politics, it's about identity, struggle, and the human longing for belonging. From ancient tribes to modern states, the path to nationhood is one of the most fascinating chapters in the history of civilization. Thousands of years ago, people lived in tribal groups rather than nations. Identity was defined by family, language, and loyalty to a local leader. The idea of a country as we know it did not yet exist. Over time, as humans settled, farmed, and traded, tribes grew into kingdoms and empires. The earliest civilizations in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and China built cities, armies, and laws. Their rulers claimed divine power, and their people began to see themselves as part of something greater than a tribe, a civilization. But the concept of a nation, a community of people united not by a ruler, but by shared culture and destiny, took shape much later. It began to emerge during the Middle Ages in Europe. As empires like Rome fell, local rulers filled the void. Over centuries, these territories evolved into distinct identities. England, France, Spain, each defined by language, faith, and history. Wars, marriages, and revolutions slowly drew borders and built nations from chaos. In France, the idea of national unity grew out of revolution. When the people rose up in 1789, they declared that sovereignty belonged not to kings, but to citizens. The French Revolution was not just political. It was philosophical. It introduced powerful ideas like liberty, equality, and fraternity. Across Europe, oppressed people began to ask a new question. If they can rule themselves, why can't we? This question sparked waves of nationalist movements throughout the 19th century. In Italy, dozens of small states and kingdoms united under leaders like Giuseppe Garibaldi and Count Cavour, forming a single nation for the first time in centuries. In Germany, Chancellor Otto von Bismarck used diplomacy and war to unify the German-speaking lands into a powerful empire. In Eastern Europe, peoples under the rule of Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire began demanding independence. National pride became a driving force of politics, one that would both inspire freedom and ignite conflict. Beyond Europe, the idea of the nation spread across the world through both colonization and liberation. European empires carved up continents, drawing borders that often ignored local cultures. But the same imperial systems that once divided people also connected them through shared resistance. In Asia, Africa, and the Americas, new national identities began to form. In the Americas, the 18th and 19th centuries saw waves of independence movements. The United States declared its independence from Britain in 1776, built on the belief that all men are created equal. Inspired by that example, leaders like Simon Bolivar fought to free South America from Spanish rule, giving birth to nations like Venezuela, Colombia, and Peru. Across the Atlantic, the Haitian Revolution became the first successful slave uprising, creating the world's first Black republic. The 20th century brought an even greater transformation, the age of decolonization. After the devastation of World War II, former colonies across Africa and Asia demanded freedom. India's independence in 1947, led by Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy of non-violence, became a symbol of peaceful resistance. Soon after, nations like Indonesia, Ghana, Kenya, and Vietnam rose from colonial rule, each carving its own identity from the struggles of the past. But the birth of nations has never been simple. For every success story, there were struggles, conflicts, and sacrifices. New borders sometimes divided ancient communities. Wars were fought over language, religion, and resources. In some cases, the idea of nation became a weapon of exclusion, a force that united some while alienating others. The lesson of history is clear. Nationhood is powerful, but it must be guided by justice and empathy to truly flourish. In the modern era, the meaning of a nation continues to evolve. Globalization has connected economies and cultures like never before, challenging old ideas of identity. Supranational organizations like the European Union show that cooperation among nations is possible, that unity does not always mean uniformity. Yet, even in a connected world, people still cherish their roots, their languages, traditions, and flags, symbols of belonging in a vast, complex planet. The birth of nations is not just a political story, it's a human one. It tells us about courage, about people who refused to be ruled by others, who dreamed of self-determination and dignity. From revolutions to declarations, from empires collapsing to flags rising, it is a story written in the hearts of those who dared to say, "This is our home, our land, our future." Today, as we look at the map of the world, we see not just borders, but memories, lines that carry centuries of struggle and hope. Every nation has a birth story, often written in both triumph and pain. Together, they form the great tapestry of human civilization. A reminder that while we may live under different flags, we all share one world and one destiny.